Firstly, thank you for joining today. Just to introduce myself, I'm Maybelline Middleton, the Microsoft Business Development Manager here at Bechtle. So a big part of my role is customer success and ensuring that customers such as yourselves are ultimately getting the most out of your investment. So on 1st of March, Microsoft announced the general availability of Microsoft Defender for Business for Microsoft 365 Business Premium customers. So this means that for Business Premium customers, you now have an endpoint security solution included within your licensing to better protect you from ransomware, malware, phishing, and other threats. So we have Chorus joining us today just to run through the security features in Business Premium licensing, just give you an overview of Defender for Business, run through the portal and the capabilities, onboarding for Defender for Business, and adding servers to Defender for Servers and Azure Arc. So here at Bechtle, we have a number of service partners, and Chorus are our trusted partner for Microsoft security. So this is their bread and butter, and this ensures essentially that we can support customers every step of the way. So I'll now hand over to Callie for an overview of Chorus and what they do.
Thank you, Maybelline. So hi everybody, I'm Callie and I'm one of the channel partners here at Chorus. So who are we? We are a managed cyber security provider and we've been Microsoft Gold partners now for around 12 years. Chorus itself was established around 22 years ago, predominantly within the MSP space, which has given us a strong operational background as the foundation for our cyber security services. Around 3.5 years ago, we were lucky enough to be part of Microsoft's Sentinel Private Preview. And following this, we heavily invested into building out our SOC services with the advanced capabilities that they have to date. And alongside that, we worked with Microsoft to verify the architecture of our security services. And as a result, we hold Microsoft Gold competencies and are one of their preferred suppliers. In terms of our services, so we are a 24/7, 365 extensive security operations service, and we are entirely based in the UK. We have 3 service offerings. So we have the MDR for endpoint, XDR for cloud, and XDR for hybrid, which is on-prem and cloud solutions. And our services are underpinned entirely by Microsoft technologies, but they do encompass mixed estates. I think it's really important to get the message across that with Chorus, we get the best, with Chorus, you get the best of both worlds. You get the experience and the maturity of that larger provider. So i.e. we're currently integrating ServiceNow to enhance the streamlined automation and interaction within businesses of all sizes, but alongside the personality of that smaller, more agile partner. For us, customers and our employees are not just numbers, and we're on that journey with you to support the security and how that looks for you and your business. With accreditations, we're ISO 27000 and 9001 accredited, and we have been keeping up with all of the regular renewals. And we're also nominated for the CSP award by, I think it was Police Neutral, which means that we've gained access to all of the government-led information on top trends, what's happening in the market, and any potential vulnerabilities, which will assist in all of our threat detection, keeping us working proactively and supporting that end user. And just finally, in terms of our experience to date, we have experience of working with your kind of large enterprise organizations at 30,000 employees down to your 50,000 employees. And with a mixture of industries, we've covered hospitality, legal, engineering. And in addition to that, we are also supporting our partners like Bechtle. And that's because we have the reputation and the specialist knowledge and enablement within the area to deliver advanced security, transformation, and all services, which has proven a real success. So we're seeing increased demand for our SOC services, and here we are today. So over to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much, Callie. Thank you everyone for tuning into the webinar. My name is Mark Jones, and I'm the head of cybersecurity at Chorus. I've been head of cybersecurity for about a year. Previous to that, I was our kind of principal security architect, and I was mainly responsible for designing and building our Microsoft-based SOC services. And I've also been involved in a huge number of implementation projects covering the whole of Microsoft security and Azure security, including rolling out Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Business, which is mainly what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to share my screen, and there's kind of a combination of going over some information and some demos to cover, to talk more about Defender for Business, how to roll it out, little things we'd recommend, and some other security features that are in the business premium licensing. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now. And I'm showing you the very useful Microsoft 365 map for business premium. So this kind of shows us all the components that make up the business premium licensing. Now, it's important to kick off by saying you don't necessarily need Defender for Business Premium to have Defender for Business. It's also available as a standalone SKU if you're interested, and I'd recommend you speak to Bechtle for more information on that. So the main focus of today's conversation is going to be around business, around Defender for Business, Microsoft Defender for Business. But it's important to take a moment to recognize the other security features. One of the main ones is another Defender product, and that's Defender for Office 365. Business Premium licensing contains Defender for Office 365 Plan 1. And Defender for Office 365 covers kind of email, basically, email threats, any kind of malicious links or malicious attachments that are sent to your users will be picked up by Defender for Office. It also very usefully covers kind of Teams protection, SharePoint protection, and OneDrive protection as well. So if you're using something else for email filtering, you still get some good value out of Defender for Office 365 by making it protect kind of OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. That's one of the main features, but it's also important to recognize that we also have access to conditional access, which is kind of access control for accessing all the cloud resources. And through conditional access, we can set up some very, very useful security features that are going to significantly reduce the chances of our accounts being compromised. So we have in the middle of this image MFA, which goes without saying how important that is. And conditional access allows us to roll out MFA to all our users, to block legacy authentication, stop people being able to brute force our passwords. And it also allows us to do some other clever things like consider device health in access control and the state of someone's identity. Have they done something suspicious recently? Have they done something that's anomalous for that user? In which case, we might want to give them an additional prompt. We might want to force them to re-answer an MFA prompt ahead of time, or we might want to make another access decision based on that. And conditional access allows us to do that. We also have access to self-service password reset, which is going to allow users to reset their own passwords, take some pressure off the service desk or the IT team, and really do it in a best practice secure way. And we also have app proxy, which is a way to kind of add a conditional access front end to like an on-premise web application, which is again is hugely useful and allows us to move to the cloud faster than just keeping them separate. We can surface old applications through the cloud and allow users to access them without needing to connect to the network. So really, really useful. And then we have a whole host of features in Intune. So we have endpoint management, and we'll jump into that in a minute, and I'll show you some of the Defender related things we can do there. But just to reiterate, that Business Premium allows us to cover the entire estate within Intune. We can manage everything through Intune. We can deploy security baselines through Intune. We can deploy our security tooling through Intune, and we can also do some clever things like wipe devices or reset up devices remotely. And then we're going to move across to the right of this image, which is really Defender for Business. And we're going to talk more about Defender for Business. So first of all, let's cover what is Defender for Business. Defender for Business is essentially an EDR solution. And with SMEs facing increasing cyber threats like ransomware and nearly 1 in 4 experiencing a breach in the past year, it's really important to have good protection on your endpoints. We also know through other stats that about 70% of breaches falls through endpoints, basically. Obviously, there's a whole host of ways an attacker can gain access to your environment, but it's true that the endpoints are a huge attack surface and something that's really critical to have good visibility into and good monitoring of. So Defender for Business is an enterprise-grade endpoint security solution designed to protect organizations against very sophisticated cyber threats. It's included in the business premium licensing, obviously, and as I mentioned before, there's kind of standalone licensing. It's really kind of a limited capability version of Defender for Endpoint. And Defender for Endpoint comes really in the higher tiers of Microsoft licensing, or again, you can buy it as a standalone. The only real difference in Defender for Business to Defender for Endpoint is we can't do advanced hunting through Defender for Business, which really is normally out of scope for smaller businesses anyway. That's more mature in someone's security capabilities. Also, we can cover servers. So there's Defender for Business server licensing. That's in preview right now, so it's soon to be made generally available. And currently, what we recommend and what we see most of our customers do is roll out Defender for Business for all the user endpoints, and then typically we recommend using Defender for servers, typically through Defender for Cloud to onboard the servers. And the benefits to that are really that we can combine signals, so we can see a good picture of attacks that go between servers and endpoints, or maybe start on endpoints and move to servers, or vice versa. We can see that if we have all of our telemetry going into the Defender portal. So first of all, I'm going to jump into the Defender for Business portal, and we'll have a tour around and see what kind of capabilities are there. So if I come over to this tab here, we have the security.microsoft.com website. And this is the main portal for any kind of Microsoft related security tooling. So all our Defender for Business data is going to be in here. All our Defender for Office 365 data is going to be in here. If you wish to add additional products or solutions in the Microsoft Defender suite, they would also surface in this portal. And it's a really nice unified view across everything. So you can see I have a couple of devices already onboarded in my device inventory list, and I can show you what kind of things you can see in the portal. So if I jump into this machine, and we give that a second to load, I can show you some of the information that we get. So this is kind of a device overview page. I can see the risk level that's assigned to this machine, and that's based on recent alerting, known vulnerabilities or configuration problems on the machine. And we can kind of move in further. We can see a full timeline of everything that's happening on that device. And you can see here in the top view, as far back as I can go, which is up to basically a year. I can see any kind of suspicious events that have happened on this device. So if I go back in time, I can see here this has triggered an alert a few weeks ago. And if I go through this timeline, we'll just minimize that a little bit so we can see easier. If I start to scroll through this timeline, we can see any kind of suspicious behavior is flagged with the MITRE ATT&CK technique. And I can see a full view of everything this machine's doing. I can also come in here and see security recommendations, i.e. what should I change on this Windows 11 endpoint to make it more secure? What should I change to improve my exposure score? And of course, using Defender for Business, we can start to make use of some of the secure scores available in Microsoft 365. So if you need to report security or keep track of how you're doing security-wise, the secure score is a really easy way to communicate that to the business. You should see, as you implement these recommendations, as you patch, you'll see your exposure score for devices come down, and you'll see your general secure scores go up, basically. So we have our security recommendations in here, and I can click in here and get some more information. It will tell me exactly why I should do this and what I need to do. There's also some really useful information where it will look across my existing endpoints and tell me if it thinks there'll be any conflicts if I implement that rule. So it's really useful for seeing if something would cause a problem with my users or impact productivity, which obviously we want to avoid at all costs. And the other useful feature, I can see a full software inventory of everything that's installed on this machine. And if we go further down here to vulnerability management, it's the other really useful feature of Defender for Business. You have access to vulnerability management. So I can see essentially all of the vulnerabilities that affect endpoints in my organization. And I can be pretty clever with this and also use it to prioritize what I should patch first. These things are given scores, and I can make good practical decisions on what things I should patch first, and how to do it, basically. So I can see here vulnerability details for Microsoft Edge vulnerability. I can see that it's been given a critical score, and I can see that I have one exposed device, which is one of my VMs I've made for demo. So that's very useful. We also talked about the security recommendations on the device page. I can also see that kind of across my whole estate if I want to through this view. And we have access to various based security recommendations and easy ways to improve the security posture across our endpoints. Now, we talked about Intune and how easy it is to manage through Intune. Defender for Endpoint's really easy to deploy through Intune. And typically where we do implementation projects, I'd say the real technical aspect is really more focused around how do we remove the existing AV product, right? These things normally have disable passwords. They normally have, they normally require a restart to remove fully. And Defender for Endpoint or Defender for Business is really something that's already built into the operating system. We're just activating it and pointing it to the right workspace for your organization. So very easy to onboard. Normally more difficult to remove whatever exists. If you have just basic Defender at the moment, then this is an absolute no-brainer. It's going to be very easy to deploy, and it's going to really improve the security for your endpoints. But there's basically, if we want to onboard through Intune, there's a couple of prerequisites. So I'll take you through that now. I've gone to settings in security.microsoft.com. And I'm going to come down here to our advanced features. And we just basically want to turn on the Intune integration. So I think in this case, I've already done it, but I'll just show you where it is. We have this Microsoft Intune connection here. So we can connect to Intune or Endpoint Manager, and we can really easily use signals from Defender for Endpoint in decisions, and we can also really quickly onboard devices. So I'm going to step across to my first tab here, which is Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And if I go to Endpoint Security and Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint down here, I should be able to see that the connection status is enabled because of ticking that box on the security.microsoft.com portal. I can see we've recently synchronized. I've got some settings here. I can allow Microsoft Defender for Endpoint to enforce things on devices. I can block unsupported operating systems from accessing my device, etc., etc. But once that's enabled, we can really quickly deploy a configuration policy to deploy this. So if I go to devices, go to devices, lost my toolbar. If I go to devices and go to configuration profiles, you see we're blank at the moment. If I want to roll out Defender for Endpoint, I could just choose Windows 10 and later. And there's a template for this. So very simple. I can scroll down here. I've got Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and we can create this device configuration profile. In the onboarding. And of course, I'm saying Defender for Endpoint, and you can see everything says Defender for Endpoint, but this is exactly the same for Defender for Business. And I want to leave this as is. You don't need these features to use the tools, but you might want to stop sharing samples with Microsoft if there are certain security or regulatory restrictions that say you can't potentially give away some information that you might not want to. And we can also expedite the reporting telemetry to make sure we're reporting back to the Defender portal more often. I'm going to enable this one and leave the other one unconfigured. And then I just need to decide who I'm going to onboard to. So I'm going to add all my devices. I want everything to onboard. Don't need any applicability rules to say when it should be onboarded. I just want everything to be onboarded to Defender for Endpoint. And I can create that. And we should see that that profile is created successfully, pops up in the list. And that's really all I need to do to start seeing my Intune managed devices onboard to Defender for Business. So if you pop back to the portal, we've talked about how Defender for Business, Defender for Endpoint are both EDR solutions. Basically, the R in EDR is response, right? So we can take some response actions. It's not just going to alert us. We can also do things in response to some of the alerts we see. So if I go back to my Webinar 3 VM, see I have this one here and it's active. Up in this top corner, we have a few response actions we can take, basically. And just to show you, I have this is Webinar 3 here, just so you can see I'm connected to it. And we can see what the user would go through if we take some of the response actions, how it would affect them. So first of all, I'm going to isolate the device. And isolating the device is something we might want to do if we know that there is a cyber attack on the device. We understand the scope of the breach, i.e. we understand which devices are affected, how the attacker was able to compromise these devices. We might want to isolate that device, and isolating the device essentially means cutting the network to that device, which is an aggressive action to take, but very useful when we think about how critical time is in how we respond to cyber attacks. And having a quick response, like being able to isolate a device, especially if you understand that the attackers only compromised one device, or they've really only made an initial access into the environment. It's a very useful thing to do to immediately kick that attacker out, address the problem, patch the problem, and remediate. I'm just going to give this a test reason, and we can submit this for isolation, basically. So that will take a couple of moments. If I come over to this virtual machine, we should see that shortly it will lose its connection, basically. Now I'm connected locally. This is a virtual machine I'm running on Hyper-V on my machine. So we're not going to get cut off from it. We should still be able to see what the user sees when their device is isolated. So if I try and get to another website, we'll just try to go to Google here. And you can see my internet access is blocked. I'm basically shut down. It's not going to work anymore. It's not going to let me access the network until the device is released from isolation. And also really usefully with machine isolation, we can still look at this machine in more detail. By opening a live response session, we can still get onto that machine on the back end and do any additional investigation we need to do. Although in Defender for Business, really isolation's probably all you'd need. And at that point, it will likely be rebuilding or running the automated investigation response to make sure you've cleaned up any artifacts from a malware attack or another cyber attack. So that's the main response action we could take. And then just quickly, if I unisolate this machine by following almost the exact same procedure, you should see that that machine comes back into action. And there's two types of isolation. So I'm doing a full isolation, which is completely cutting down everything. But we have customers who like to do selective isolation. And selective isolation means that we can allow Teams and Outlook to still work, basically, which is really useful because it means we can send that user a message to let them know what's happened on their device and to contact the help desk or the security team. So I've unisolated this device. A second to load, and you can see already it's jumped back into action, right? We've got to google.com, and that's all working fine now. So that's kind of the main response action in Defender for Business. if you wanted to use Defender for Endpoint, or if you use Defender for Servers, you'll also have some other response actions you can take. And those other response actions are things like restricting app execution, so only allowing applications signed by Microsoft to run on a machine. You can also obviously run on-demand scans and investigations, and we can collect kind of forensic information from the machine if we need to. More advanced capabilities, I would say they're probably not necessarily needed for most small businesses, but very useful. And if security is very important to your business, I'd really recommend it. Okay, so that kind of brings us back to the portal, and we've really done a quick tour of Defender for Business and what we can do in the portal, response actions, how we'd onboard devices through Intune, and some of the vulnerability management information we can get from the portal. I also have touched on the fact that Defender for Business is available for servers. It's currently in preview, and it will be made available for general availability shortly. But what we currently do with customers is we use Defender for servers, and we do that through something called Azure Arc. So I thought as a second demo, we could quickly go through how to onboard our on-premise servers to Defender for servers. Now, you can buy this as a standalone SKU. Again, talk to Bechtle if you need help with the SKUs and the pricing. Or you can do it through Defender for Cloud. And with Defender for Cloud, to onboard a server to Defender for servers really costs about, I think about £4 to £5 per server per month, essentially. And there are some really useful features we can make use of through using Azure Arc and Defender for Cloud, which we'll touch upon now. So if I open this window, basically I'm connected to a Linux machine. So this is an on-premise server, and just run some arbitrary command to show you. And this is just an on-prem Linux server. Again, I'm running it from Hyper-V on my local machine. And I thought we could quickly review how we'd onboard this to Defender for servers, basically. Make sure we have that same visibility. We can have telemetry from our servers and our endpoints, and get the best possible view of security in our organization. So if I cut back across, you can see I'm in the Azure portal. So the first thing we need to do is turn on Defender for servers for our servers. So if I come into Defender for Cloud and give this a second to load, we will turn on Defender for servers, but we won't turn on any of the other workload protections. So there's basically 11 plans in Defender for Cloud, and we're really only interested for the purposes of this demo in turning on Defender for servers. So the only workload protection I'm turning on here is Defender for servers, and Defender for servers plan 2 comes with a whole host of features like file integrity monitoring, adaptive network hardening, vulnerability assessment, etc. But really, for full-featured Defender for Endpoint, we can use Defender for Servers Plan 1. And we also get kind of automatic onboarding. So any machine I connect to Azure through Azure Arc, or also if I use Google Public Cloud or AWS, I can also use Defender for Cloud to protect those and do automatic onboarding for VMs I might provision in AWS as well. So in this example, we're obviously focusing on on-prem. It's also worth making note of the fact that this would cover other public clouds as well. So I'll save that, and we've got Defender for servers turned on. And I'm also going to go into this auto provisioning tab over here. And I'm going to turn on some things that are important for automatic onboarding. So we need the log analytics agent to turn on. And that's about it. That's all our prerequisites in place. So now we just need to go through the steps to onboard the server to Azure Arc. And when it's onboarded to Azure Arc, it will automatically provision the log analytics workspace on that VM, and it will automatically start onboarding the Defender for Endpoint agent. So that can cover Linux, it can cover any Windows server. I mean, it's a really useful feature. So like coming along to here, we're just creating a resource group for this. So we'll just quickly create a resource group so we can keep our Azure Arc resources in one place. I'm going to look up Azure Arc in the main search bar of the Azure portal. Azure Arc. And we're basically going to get started by connecting a server. So I'll come to the servers page here. See, I've already got one machine onboarded. If I wanted to add another, it's very simple. I can generate scripts through the portal. So we'll generate a script to onboard a single machine to Azure Arc. So a few things we need first, a resource group that we just made, outbound connectivity to port 443, which I'm sure we'll have in place, local admin permissions, which I have, and just no restrictions in our connectivity. So we'll put that in our resource group we just created, and it's going to be a Linux VM. And the connectivity method's public endpoint. And then I can add tags to say where the physical presence of this machine is. That's kind of outside the scope for the webinar today, but useful to know. And then I basically get this onboarding script. So I can copy the script and we can run that against our VM here. So I'm just going to paste that straight in. And we're going to go through the onboarding steps to put this into Azure Arc. And like I say, when it's in Azure Arc, it will automatically onboard to Defender for Service. It should take only a couple of moments. And when it's done, it's going to kind of give us an ID for the device. And what we're going to do with that ID for the device is we're going to basically register it in the Azure portal to say it belongs to us. And then we'll see the device appear in Azure Arc. And at that point, we can also make use of some other features. So while that's onboarding a second, if I come back over to the Azure portal, the other huge benefit of using Azure Arc is Azure Policy. So we'll move over to Azure Policy, quickly touch on this. So the benefit of Azure Policy is if we want to keep an eye on our virtual machines to make sure that they're compliant with a baseline for our organization, we might want to say that we require a certain patching level. We might want to say there's certain configuration settings we want to see. It might be that there are regulatory compliance that we're following, and we want to make sure that we're compliant with those standards. And Azure Policy is a really useful way of doing that. And if we use Azure Arc, we can basically deploy Azure Policy to both our on-premise VMs and our cloud VMs. And we kind of have like a one view of everything. We can very quickly identify when things aren't compliant. So it's really useful and something, of course, we always recommend. We'll pop back over to this. And as we come back across to the VM now, we can see that the onboarding is completed. And I just need to register the device basically as belonging to my tenant. So see here, I've been given a code. We'll just make a quick note of that. And we need to go to this website, microsoft.com/device login. So we'll do it here, microsoft.com/device login. It's just asking for that code that we had there. So we'll paste that in. Off with our account, belongs to this tenancy. And that's it, basically. We're onboarded. So if I go back to the resource group that contained server, we should see now that there's a resource in there. Across to Azure Arc and look at servers. see, this is the machine we just onboarded, and it will auto provision, install the log analytics extension on, and automatically onboard to Defender for Service. That's basically everything I had to show you through today. I will pass back over to Maybelline to close us off.
Thank you for that, Mark. I'm sure that's been helpful for many there. So if you'd like to understand more around using Defender for Business, whether this is to just, again, review the features available and or consider whether you now may have duplicated functionality with third-party solutions, then we can do a competitor analysis, looking to save you costs longer term, or whether you are just looking for support, further support with rolling out Defender for Business, perhaps you're interested in a workshop, then please get in touch with your account manager or reach out to myself. We're always more than happy to jump on a call to discuss this further. We are looking to host another webinar later on this year on Defender, taking a deep dive, so please look out for that as well. We also have a Microsoft news page on our Bechtle blog and opt into our quarterly Microsoft newsletter to stay in the loop. Thank you again to Callie and Mark from Chorus, and thank you for joining today.